G'day everyone and welcome to our TAS Department of Education Remote Learning Webinar number 3, OneNote and Class Notebook. My name is Troy Waller. I am a Learning Delivery Specialist for pretty much for the southern states in Australia, so that's Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. Occasionally I do a little bit of WA. I'm actually dialing in or calling in to this webinar today from Melbourne. Where it is rainy and cold and horrible. And I've also got another person on the call. I've got Clara on the call today. I'll let her come off mute and tell you all about herself and where she's from.
Hi everyone, I'm Clara. I'll be supporting Troy in the Q&A section, so pop in any of your questions in there. I'm based in Sydney, New South Wales. You can generally find me in the Microsoft store. I do help with community events such as gaming events, school excursions, etc. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Excellent, very good. Now, these webinars are being recorded, so possibly you're listening to this as a recording rather than live. So obviously for you, it's going to be hard to post your questions, but I want to draw your attention to this website here, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. This is our landing page and launching page for everything to do with remote learning from Microsoft Australia. Now, the reason I draw your attention to that in terms of your Q&A is when you go to that page, there's a link at the top or a couple of hyperlinks where you can actually post your questions and ask your questions. I promise you there are real people on the end of those links. It's not just bots. And they will be able to answer your question, if not find out and forward your question on to the right people internally at Microsoft. Okay, so definitely there's Q&A for those of you that are on the call today and on this webinar, and please see the little Q&A button. If you hover around, you'll see that. Type your questions in, but if you're on a recording and you do have questions, please visit this link here and go in and ask your questions there. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is getting the slides and recordings. Now, excuse me, now knowing that this is the third webinar, please know that you've got the previous recordings and the previous slides from those recordings, from those webinars available to you at that link. But in a very short amount of time, the slides from today and the recording from today will also be made available to you. So that's tlc.education.tas.gov.au, and then you can click around in there. You'll find links which will take you to these bits and pieces. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to explore today in our webinar. We're going to look at the Microsoft Educator community first. I'm going to take you in and show you that. There's some really good stuff in there, really good online learning. Then we're going to talk obviously about OneNote. So that's why we're here today. We're looking at OneNote and OneNote Class Notebook. And I'm going to share with you about where to find OneNote. Then I'm going to talk to you about the anatomy of the OneNote, exactly how it's structured and how we can use it through features. Then we'll spend some time in Class Notebook. Then we'll have a look at Teams, okay, and the integration of Class Notebook and OneNote into Teams. And again, please visit our first webinar, which is the one on Teams, which will give you a really good overview of Teams. So I'm going to assume that you've accessed that first webinar, or at least will have access to that first webinar. Then we'll do some next steps and also some Q&A as we go. So looking at our Microsoft Educator Center, education.microsoft.com, education.microsoft.com. I'm going to take you into that website right now. So there it is there, education.microsoft.com. Now, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is obviously here at the very top on the start page, we've got some great courses around distance learning. All right, so you can click on there, get started and off you go. But I do want to suggest that you first sign in, create an account and sign in. Just use your TAS DoE email address and regular password because it will connect directly to your account. And then it will start to keep a record of everything that you've done. And I'll come back to that in a moment, but it's really good to make sure that you do sign in, create an account. Exploring courses, well, we've got a series of individual courses and they can be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour or an hour and a half. And I'll take you down, I'll just show you one in particular. So if we were to do this course here, Beyond the Basics with Flipgrid, you can see it's a 1 hour course. You can come and go as you want. You don't have to do it all in one sitting, but at the end of that course, you'll be awarded with the equivalent of 1 hour's worth of PD recognition. Okay, so those are our courses. Now the courses are organised by courses that you haven't yet started, courses that you're in progress, and then further down you get courses that you've completed. And you can search for courses by keyword. So it's not just title. So for example, if I wanted to look at something to do with coding, know how to spell it first. If I want to look at something to do with coding, you can see these are all the courses that are actually linked to coding, right? Or if I wanted to look at something specifically around Minecraft, okay, that's going to take me in and show me all the Minecraft courses as well. Or if I wanted to look at something more sort of pedagogically focused, like I wanted to look at something about inclusivity, for example, you can see here's all our accessibility courses and inclusivity courses, etc. All right, so I really want to stress that this is a great place for you to go. The other thing too is we have what's called learning paths. So these are groups of courses that have been grouped together in a linear fashion, but you don't need to do them necessarily in order. So for example, if we were going to do the inclusive classroom specialization here, okay, so you can see here that's an intermediate course. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, quite a lot of courses in there. And you look, it's a full 9 hours worth of PD. So again, you can come and go in these courses. You don't have to do them necessarily in order, but I will stress that oftentimes they do build on each other, right? So it's probably a good idea to do them in order the best you can. So you'll get awards and points and badges, etc., all for those individual courses, but you'll also get recognition for the learning path as well. All right, so that's what that looks like. Now, the other thing that we have is over here, view your achievements. So this is where it keeps a record of everything you've done. Now, it's gamified in the sense that there's badges and points and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, they make it a little bit of fun and give you goals to work towards. But what's really cool about this is when you sign in and create an account, it will actually keep a record of everything you've done on an audit sheet. OK, so there's a transcript there that you can download. And then you can demonstrate your learning to school leader, perhaps, or maybe to the Tasmanian Teacher Registration Board, because these courses hit the AICSL standards, so they do count as genuine PD. All right. So remembering, you know, you're not going to need certificates or anything like that. You'll just get an audit sheet that happens in here. OK, so that's something really cool for you to keep an eye out on. Now, I do want to show you as well, and I should have shown you this a moment ago, so forgive me for doing that, but if I come back into learning paths, because this is a OneNote course, if I type in OneNote, there is a course here, or a learning path, excuse me, called OneNote Teacher Academy. And if you are brand new to OneNote, or even not brand new to OneNote, this is a really good course. And you can see here it's about 3.5 hours, and this is, I won't say it's everything that you're going to need, but it's most things you're going to need to get yourself set up. So there's the getting started with OneNote, the introduction to OneNote. Then there's all about Class Notebook, Staff Notebook, and independent learning tools with independent math tools in OneNote as well. Okay, now I am going to let you know that I am dialing in from home today. And so in true work from home fashion, I've got a dog who's scratching at the back door and trying to get in. So I'm just going to let my wife let him in. Make as much noise as you want, honey, just get him in the door. Okay, so let's keep moving. Now, OneNote is an app that is right across the different platforms and right across your different devices. So whether you're on an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, Android platform, whether that's phone or a tablet, and if you're also on Windows, you're going to get dedicated apps right across the. I've got my dog scratching at me here. You have to forgive me. He thinks it's great. He's listening to me talk. Okay, so again, I'm going to get my wife to deal with him. Okay, so when we talk about OneNote for Windows, though, is OneNote for Windows actually has two ways that you can access it. One is OneNote 2016, which is the older version of OneNote, which used to be part of Office. Okay, now that still works. It's still getting feature updates from time to time, and some people love it, which is great. Keep using it. But there's also the OneNote for Windows 10 app, and you can see the difference here. It's got a slightly different icon. This one has obviously a date, 2016, and this one has no date. So when you open up your Windows device and you're looking for OneNote, you're going to see two versions there. Now, my advice to you is this. If you have never really used OneNote before, or you've not really used it in a meaningful way, get straight into the OneNote app. The reason why is this is going to be the one that's moving forward. It's going to get more feature updates and all those kinds of things. All right. So that's definitely the one to go. It's also the best one to use for the students. OK, But if you are a teacher who's been using OneNote for a long time, you're really happy with OneNote 2016, you don't want to make the change, that's okay too, you can keep using this. But my suggestion to you is introduce the students here though, okay? Get the students into the app. So what that means is you're going to need both. You can use OneNote 2016 for all your, behind the scenes building of the lesson plans and all that kind of stuff that you're used to. But you're also going to need this one to be able to see what the students see and be able to demonstrate this to the students how to access things. All right. I know that may sound like a little bit of a, a little bit complex, but again, only for those that are already using 2016. Those of you that are on OneNote, the main app, please stick with that. All right, now the other thing that we've got is we've got the online version as well, okay? So the online version is the same, whether you're on a Mac or a PC or an iPad, it doesn't matter. If you're coming in through the browser, you're going to have the same tools and the same experience. So this is really good to think about if you're coming from a school where you've got a bring your own device program, or you're thinking about the remote access, which is we don't know necessarily what the students are all using at home, etc. So it's much better to make this your lowest common denominator. If everybody's on this, then you know what everybody can do. And you can see up here it works whether you're on Edge, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari and Chrome, it's going to work. So it doesn't matter what browser they use, but they're going to have the same experience. So keep that in mind. That's one of the really good things about OneNote Online. But there's nothing to stop you from using OneNote Online and the app and 2016 and on your phone. You can use it right across. I mean, I have it on all my different devices and I use it in so many different ways. Okay, so that's OneNote, the different apps. Okay, so now let's talk about Office. Okay, so logging into Office, we come to, or logging into Office Online, I should say, we come to www.office.com. And this is where we're going to sign in to our full Office experience. Now, the last webinar that I did was an explanation all about Office 365 and how you can access that. So please go back and visit that one if you want to find out all about Office 365. But you can see OneNote lives just here. You might also see Class Notebook as an app over here as well. Now, when we sign in, we want to use our TAS DoE email address. And our usual password. Same thing goes for the kids, and that will take them straight in because you've already got Office 365 subscriptions happening. So let's talk about the anatomy of a OneNote. And what I mean by that is what's the body of a OneNote? How does it work? What's the structures and things like that? So I want to talk to you first about the idea of a ring binder. Okay, so when we have a ring binder, whether it's a lever arch binder, you can see it there on the right hand side of my screen. Once upon a time, I used to have shelves on across my desk as a teacher, and it would be full of these lever arch binders, which might be full of, learning engagements, other documents, photocopies of this and that, things that I'm wanting to keep. And each one of those ring binders would be a different topic. So one might be maths, one might be literacy, one might be etc. Right? Or you could even get more granular. One might be maths shape, and one might be maths number, and this is how you've sorted it out. Inside those lever arch binders, you've got sections, okay, or coloured inserts, and those coloured inserts are what divides up your individual pages. And then in between the inserts and in between the dividers are your individual pages. So again, think of it like a lever arch binder. You've got the lever arch binder, which in OneNote is called a notebook. You've got the coloured dividers, which in OneNote is called the sections, and then you've got the individual pages inside. And so it's the same thing when we look at OneNote. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you in to a OneNote page here, okay? And so this is the OneNote for Windows 10 app. You've possibly seen it before, hopefully you have. And again, you can see this is that explanation that I was sharing with you before. Here are my OneNotes. Okay, they're all my different notebooks. Okay, so they're called notebooks. And then I've got my individual sections, and you can see here I've got some sections, coloured inserts. And so when I click on my coloured inserts, then I have my individual pages. Okay, so I can go to all the pages that are inside research methods. I've got this one here on placebo effect. I've got another page on sampling and allocation, and then I've got a second placebo effect. And if I was to come into memory systems, I've got the Atkinson-Shiffrin model. I've got the why and how do we forget, etc., etc. All right. So again, the notebook, colored dividers or sections as we call them, and then the individual pages. Now the thing about a OneNote page, I'm going to come down here to the brain structure where we were before. Now the thing about a OneNote page is is like a giant piece of butcher's paper. It's not going to be, you don't want you to be thinking this is an A4, A3, B5, B4. It's nothing like that. It's just an unlimited page that goes on and on forever, whether we go down or whether we go across. All right, so it just will continue on and on and on. Now I'm just going to bring my mouse down here, excuse me, so I can drag this across a little bit so you can see this page here. Okay, so that's inside this section. You've got all these pages, and I can just open those up. Look at that, that's a bit of a mess. I'm going to delete that, and I can easily add and delete. I can add new sections, I can add new pages, etc. All right, so that's the anatomy of our OneNote. Now let's have a look at our tabs across the top, right? Because I want to get you to understand the way that everything works. So the first thing we have is what's called the Home tab. All right, now the Home tab, if you look at it, it looks a lot like Word. I'm going to click over here so you can see this come alive. So it looks a lot like Word. All right, I've got my my formatting, bold, italic, underline. I can change the font type, change the font size. I can just going to take us into a page. There we go. That's a little bit better so we can see these. So you can see I've got the font formatting, bold, italic, underline. I can highlight. I can change the font color. I've got my format painter, etc. Now this is not going to replace Word because it is not a word processing tool. It does some of the basic word processing things, but still, if we're going to write assignments and letters and all that kind of stuff, it's probably much better in Word. But nevertheless, we can do some of the basics in here as well. Now, the thing about this I want to draw your attention to as well is that everything on the page is a section. Okay, or sorry, is an object, which means that I can grab things. So you know how it is when you're in Microsoft Word and you put a graphic in and it'll snap up to the corner and you try to move it and it keeps snapping back. In here, however, everything is inside an object, much like when we're using something like PowerPoint or Photoshop. So whether it's a text or whether it's a video, whether it's a graphic, I can just grab it like this, and I can move it around, okay? And so it's much more convenient when we're thinking about the objects than it is inside something like something like Word. Now in this Home tab as well, we've also got the ability to dictate, okay? So I'm just going to come down here, I'm going to create a new page. Oh, sorry, I'm going to just open this page here. I'm going to turn on my dictate features. Now look, I can set my languages, okay? And I'm going to say here in Australia, and then I'm going to start to dictate. Oh. Okay, so as I start to dictate, you're going to see these things start to appear on the page, full stop. All right, and you can see it went back and capitalized and all that kind of stuff as well. So I can dictate, but of course I can type, and you can see here if I've got a stylus, I can write and draw and all those kinds of things as well, but we'll get more into that in a minute. Now the other thing that we've got is we've got the insert tab up here. Let me come back to my brain structure lab. We've got the insert tab, so I can throw in tables and I can embed files much like I can inside Word, which will basically bring a copy of that file into my OneNote page. Best not to do that though, because it will actually bloat your OneNote. What I would suggest is grab links, hyperlinks to the shared documents that you have and post those in so that students can access them. You can also do a printout. So you can see here, this is a PDF, which once upon a time I would have photocopied and give it to the students. Instead, what I did was I printed that page out directly onto the OneNote page. So it can't be edited. It's like a photocopy stuck onto my big piece of butcher's paper, but now students can type over the top of that and they can edit, etc. Sorry, I should say they can ink over the top, not edit. I've got the ability to import pictures. So whether I'm using the camera on my device, an online picture or a picture from a file, I can also bring in my videos. All right, so you can see down here what I've got. I'm just going to maximize this for you. Sorry about this. I'm used to using it on my Surface, and my Surface is touch, so it's a little bit hard for me. But you can see here what I've done is I've just grabbed a YouTube clip. I've pasted the YouTube clip in there, and then it becomes a fully working YouTube thumbnail, right? So you can actually watch the video from inside. So if I hit play in there, hopefully I've turned the sound on for you. If not, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that video just plays from straight inside of OneNote. All right, let me just minimize that a little bit. I can record audio files into my page. I can also upload, as we said before, other kind of audio files if I want. It integrates really well with Outlook, so it'll bring meeting details in. You can see I can put symbols. I can be using the equations input. We've got the maths tool as well, which we're going to have a look at in another workshop on another day. You can throw stickers in. You've got the researcher tab, and you've also got the ability to import and paste Microsoft Forms inside your OneNotes as well, which is great, which means the kids can be doing assessments, but they can also be doing their working out on the side inside of OneNote. Okay, so again, we will explore that definitely in our assessment webinar, which is coming up a little bit later. All right, so that's the insert tab. Now on the draw tab, you can see here you've got the ability to draw with all different kinds of colors and pens, etc. Whether you're drawing with your mouse, whether you're drawing with touch, or whether you're drawing with a stylus. Now, can I just let you know that the best experience you're going to have with OneNote is with a touch and stylus enabled device. Okay, so you can see here the student has actually been, or the teacher's been inking over the top and taking their own notes, etc. So it's the full power of the pen. You can insert shapes, much like you can if those of you that use PowerPoint will know that. You've got ink to shape as well for helping you to draw and perfect your shapes. You've got a ruler which sits inside so you can measure angles and you can draw straight lines. And again, we've got the maths tools, but we'll explore that at another time. You've also got Immersive Reader, which again, we're going to talk a lot about that in the upcoming Inclusive Classroom webinar. You've got the ability to change the page colors. You've got the ability to make it grid line. You could make it ruled line, so kids can be using that to be taking notes just like they would in their real life notebook. And there's ability to translate, accessibility checker, etc. All right, so there's some really cool stuff in there. I do want to show you this one here called replay, because replay is really, really cool. Now, if for some reason stroke order or the order that I had done something was really important on a page, and I wanted to go back and look at the way the student has done that, or the student wanted to look at how I've done something, we can use this thing here called replay. So what I do is I highlight my entire page, and then what happens is it starts to play it back in the order that it was actually built. So it's not just going to do that with strokes and lines, it'll do that with graphics and all kinds of stuff. So you can actually see the way that a student has done it. It's really good when you're looking at character-based languages, for example, Chinese, where stroke order is really important. Okay, so that's there in the View tab. All right, so that's the basic anatomy and features of OneNote. I certainly have not done it full justice and showed you everything and all the cool things that you can do, but hopefully you can see from a teacher's perspective, we're not losing the power of the pen at all. We're actually adding to what was once upon a time pen and paper. We're adding the whole multimedia themes and multimedia features to that. So I can throw in, as we said before, audio and video and graphics and all that kind of stuff, but still being able to write on it and treat it like I would a piece of paper. Okay, so that's, as I said, those features. You know what I might do? I might just see, I might just stop there and just see, Clara, have there been any questions about, anybody thrown any questions up about what we've looked at so far?
Hey, Troy, no questions so far.
Okay, cool. Well, folks, don't forget there is that Q&A button there. So if you do have questions, throw them in. All right, so let's talk now about OneNote Class Notebook. So this OneNote that I've got here is actually a class notebook. So this is a real one. It's a Year 12 psychology notebook. And you can see here I've got a collaboration space, a content library, teacher only, and then I've got sections for all my students. Okay, so the thing about Class Notebook is a whole class notebook that everybody comes together in. It's a collaborative document. I, as a teacher, have full read and write access across the entire document, but the students have conditional access and conditional permissions depending on what I, as a teacher, choose to give them. So let me take you through some of the basics. We have what's first called a collaboration space. So the collaboration space, as the name notes, is a place for everybody to come together and work together. Now you can see here I've got a whole series of sections, okay? So I've got assessment demo, I've got using the collaboration space, I've got brainstorm, red group, green group, Tracy's group, etc. Now, I as a teacher can create those, students can't create them. But what I can do is I can actually set those sections to be whole class, or I can differentiate. So I can, for example, red group might be made up of 4 students, green group is made up of a different 7 students, Tracy's group, etc. All right, so students can come in, they've got read and write access to whatever I choose them to have read and write access to, and they can work together. So it's really good for group work. Second thing I've got though is I've got what's called a content library. Now, remember, this is my Year 12 psychology notebook. So what we've got here is all these different sections are unit topics. Now you can set this up however you want, but in this scenario, we've set it up as unit topics. So these are different unit topics throughout the year, okay? And when we come inside there, these are all my learnings, okay, all my learning engagements and all my learning documents, etc., that I want the students to be able to access. Now, the most important thing to note, though, is that students have read-only access. They can copy a page, okay, and do whatever they want with it, but they can't muck around with my original, with my master copies, okay? So I have read and write access, kids have read only and copy access. And then we have what's called a teacher only section. Teacher only section is where I can build all my, my learnings and my engagements and all that kind of stuff. And when things aren't quite ready to be in collaboration or content library, I can build it in here. So the students don't even know that that exists. They don't even see that. And then you can see here, I've got all my individual student spaces, okay? Now I want to stress, I as a teacher can see everybody, but the students can only see themselves. So what that means is for a student, let's say someone like Bonnie, Bonnie will see the collaboration space, the content library, and herself. All right, that's all she'll see. Belinda would see the collaboration space, the content library, and herself. But I as a teacher can see everybody. All right, so in the student only sections, the students have full read and write access, all right? So they have full control over that space because that's like their notebook. So the idea is when I take my computer home at night, every night, I've got all my students' workbooks coming with me. But the cool thing about it is they have their workbook too. So no longer taking, a big stack of workbooks under my arm or, in a box or anything like that. Now it just sits all inside the laptop. But when I take them home, the students don't lose access to their area. They have full ongoing access. All right, so that's what that looks like. Okay, so that's the collaboration space, the content library, the teacher only section, and my student spaces. Now to create a class notebook, it's really easy. You can see I've got class notebook up here. Okay, and then I can create a class notebook by clicking on that button there, and I will be taken through a very basic wizard, which will take me through setting this up. Now, I want to stop and just say, if I create a class notebook here, it will create the class notebook inside my personal OneDrive space. As a teacher, my personal OneDrive space. Now, the problem with that is if I create that inside my personal OneDrive space and then leave the school or leave the department or something like that, then the problem is getting that and moving across is really, really problematic. Well, not really problematic, but it's not easy to do. If we create it in Teams, then it sits in the school shared space, and it's much easier for us to pass that on and to hand that around. So we'll get into that when we look a little bit later. Okay, so that's how we create one. Now we can add and remove students to our class notebook here. We can add and remove colleagues, teachers. I'll come back to manage notebooks in a minute because I want to come back here and I want to show you what happens when we distribute a page. So if I've got a page, for example, if I'm in Doreena's, no, let's come back into my content library. If I'm looking here at this brokers area task, okay, page. Now this page might be important for some reason, and I want to make sure that all the students get a copy of that. When I click on distribute page, look what happens. I get the ability to distribute that page to everybody, the ability to distribute it just to individuals, or the ability to distribute it to predetermined groups that I may have built. I also have the ability to send it to people, students in other class notebooks, not just in this one. And then I also have the ability to delete a page. So if I push that page out and then later on decide, oh, actually I've made a mistake, I can delete that and it will delete that page from everybody's section. But it's probably making more sense if I show you first. If I click to distribute page, look what happens. It opens up this little dialog over here. Uh-oh, something went wrong. Let's try that again. The demo gods are not smiling on me. I hope they are. Let's try that again. Let's distribute that page again. Okay, apologies. So basically what happens is it opens up this dialog box here, and then I can distribute that page directly into all my students' spaces, and I choose which one of these areas I want them to, that page to go into, which one of these sections. So I might want to drop it into their research methods section, etc. And by clicking on that, it will automatically go everywhere, okay, to every student. I can also distribute new sections, so I can create these new sections in my student spaces. I can copy a page to content library, so I might be in here in my own teacher section. I'm building something, it's ready to go in the content library, and then I click on content library and it will ask me where I want that to go. And you watch, this is going to struggle again, and I'm really sorry that that's happening. Hopefully you're going to have a better time of that. The ability to review student work means that I can choose a page in a section and it will take me to each individual student, rather than me having to find, go through here and find what section it's in, and then I go in and find the page. Review student work will actually help me find that page for each student and go one through the other. All right, now the other thing that happens here is the ability to manage notebooks. Now I'm going to pray that that's going to work, and it doesn't look like it's going to. All right, that's okay. Forgive me for that. I've probably got the worst internet in the world. But managing notebooks means that I can do a lot of that back end stuff, and you just have to trust me. I'll share some links with you so you can go back in and explore that. But managing notebooks means that I can go in and I can change these names here of these sections. I can set the collaboration space permissions and things like that. All right, so that's Class Notebook. And hopefully you can see some of the cool things that will do for you when it works for you, than what it's worked for me today. But nevertheless, it's actually a really cool tool. All right, leveraging Class Notebook in Microsoft Teams. So I've actually given you here a link directly to that, to an article which is going to share with you all about the good things that you can do with Class Notebook inside Teams. But I'm going to take you in, and fingers crossed the demo gods are going to smile on me. Okay. Fingers crossed the demo gods are going to smile on me. I just realized why that wasn't working for me, guys, because I was in the wrong tenant. So I'm now going to, hey presto, I am now genuinely going to show you how this works. So here we are. Let's have a look at this classical conditioning page. I'm going to distribute that. I'm going to distribute that page directly to all my students. I click on distribute page, and then what happens over here. So I just want to let you know what happened before was human error, not computer error. Completely my fault. So look what happens here. It opens up all my student sections. So you can see here, when I come into Aziz, right, we've got things over here that are alphabetized. We've got brain science, class notes, etc. Now I want to send this into, let's just imagine I'm going to send this into their homework section. Okay, so I click on that, I click distribute, and then that page will appear in every single student in their homework section. Okay, now the other thing I can do is I can distribute that to individual students, I can send that to groups, I can send it to different class notebooks, and if I make a mistake, I can delete the page from everybody's section all at once. All right, now I told you about distributing the new section. I want to create these and send them, which is cool. It's copying things to my content library, but what I do want to show you now is I want to show you this review student work because it's really quite impressive. Just going to close this there. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to open a class notebook page. So I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to look at handouts, brain structure lab, and now I'm going to review student work. Okay, so which section do I want to review? Well, in this case, I want to look at everyone's homework. Okay, so then I click next. And now it's asking me, what do you want to mark? Well, in this case, I want to mark their classical conditioning page. Okay, so this might be something that they've done some work on. And which student do I want to start with? Well, I'm going to start with Isla first. Okay, so I click on Isla and it takes me to Isla's version of that page. All right, and so there I can start to give her some feedback, whether I'm typing onto the page or whether I'm writing or whether I'm leaving an audio recording. I can do all that on her page. And then when I finish, I'm going to look at what Pavel's done. Okay, and this will take me to Pavel's version of that page. Okay, and then I can look at Fabrice, etc., etc. So it saves me having to go through and find all this. All right, again, I said to you before, we can add and remove students, add and remove teachers, but what I want to share with you now is the ability to manage notebooks. Now I need to sign into this, forgive me. All right, once you do this the first time, you won't have to do it again. And here I'm at the back end of the ability to manage that page. So I can change my student section name. So if I change it here, it'll change in all my students' sections. Brain science could become something else. I can add sections as well. This is where I enable the teacher only section. It's not enabled by default, but I can do that there. And then I can also lock and unlock the collaboration space. But here's where I set those collaboration space permissions. All right, so it's going to open up my collaboration space for me here, and I get to decide which students I'm going to put in which section. So for example, at the moment, you can see a lot of it is open to everybody. All right, but maybe for the bananas, I don't want it to be for everybody. I want it to be just for these students here. Okay. Do I want to give them only read access? Sorry, do I want to give read-only access to all the students? That is, that other students can come and see what's going on in this space? No, I don't. And then I'm going to save that. All right, so now what that means is only those students are available, are able to go into that space. So that's how we manage our collaboration space as well. All right, very good. So taking you into Teams now, I'm just going to close some of these down. Taking you into Teams now, I want to show you the integration of Class Notebook into Teams. All right, so when you set up a class team, it automatically creates a class notebook. And you can see here, this team I've called 2026G. In the general channel is the class notebook. Now, I invite you to go back and see my first webinar, which was all about Teams, where you'll get a greater understanding of Teams. But for now, I'm going to assume that you've seen that or you're about to see it. So what you can see here is in the online version of Teams or in the client version of Teams, I get OneNote Class Notebook Online sitting inside the actual Teams client. All right. Now I can maximize this. Okay, so I have more room to work with if I want. Okay, but I could also be opening this up in the app as well. You can see here I can open it in the browser and I can open it in the app. So even though it's living in the Teams space, I still have access to it across different platforms. You can see here I've got my collaboration space. I've got my content library, and I've got all my student spaces as well. And I could also turn on my my teacher only area if that's what I wanted to do. Now, when I add a student to the team, they are automatically added to the class notebook and they automatically have their student sections created in here. Okay, now also when I create a channel, the channels actually create a little piece of the collaboration space, right? So you can see here, this is a 6G is a primary team, and they've got Chinese lessons, literacy, maths, etc. So too, we've got maths notes. So if I come into the maths channel and click on notes, it will take me to that part of the collaboration space inside the OneNote. All right, so I can access it from the general channel through the class notebook, or I can access it through the channels and the notes section as well. Okay, the other thing I want to share with you is the ability to integrate your class notebooks into an assignment. All right, so what I did here was I created a maths assignment. all right, and you have a look at the student view, right, and you can see here that what I've done is I've actually assigned a page from the class notebook for them to do their work. So they will actually do their work inside the class notebook, but then they can submit that through the Teams assignment. All right, so I just want to show you when I create an assignment. So we go straight into assignments. And again, go back and watch my previous webinar for more detail on this, but I can put my title, my instructions, etc. When I add my resources, I get the option to add a page from the class notebook, from the content area or the collaboration space. So in this case, I'm going to take it from the content library. And then what it will do is it will take that page and it will create a new version of that as if I distributed it into the student sections, all right, and then they can start to work on it. So I can create a template in the content library, and then the students will actually find that waiting for them in their own section when I've created it as an assignment. Okay, so that's how we do that. Now I want to draw your attention to this here. This is a really good article called Use OneNote Class Notebook in Teams. So get your favorite search engine out, type in Use OneNote Class Notebook in Teams, and it will give you a really good rundown of all the great stuff that you can do with OneNote and OneNote Class Notebook inside Teams. All right, really, really cool. Now, the other thing, people ask me all the time, especially those of you that have been using this tool for a while, how do I set up a class notebook in Teams using existing content? Can I bring my previous class notebook into the team? The answer to that is no. However, you can access some of that stuff quite easily. So I want to share with you, I've got that link here, and when you jump in and grab these slides, you can access it, or open up your browser now and just type in set up a class notebook in Teams using existing content, and you'll find that article. Now I want to show you what that looks like, because what you do, let me come back to the top here, is when you create your class notebook, it's going to give, when you create the team and you create the class notebook for the first time, it's going to say, do you want a brand new one, or do you want from an existing notebook content? So in other words, we're not going to bring our class notebook, our existing class notebook in, but we can transfer that content across to our new class notebook. All right, so you'll have to shut down your old one after you've done this. All right, otherwise you're going to have two and you're going to confuse your students. But you can bring your content library across. You can bring your teacher only section across, okay, and then after that you go in and you create your student sections. You have to recreate your student sections again. All right, so that article was called Set Up a Class Notebook in Teams Using Existing Content. All right, I'm going to stop and just see if we've got any questions so far. Clara?
Hi, Troy.
Hey, any questions?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, cool. All right, I must be doing a great job. So let's talk about next steps. So that OneNote Teacher Academy was the one that I drew your attention to before. The link is there, but you'll find it at education.microsoft.com. Type in OneNote and you'll see the Teacher Academy. This is that learning path, 3.5 hours worth of PD, recognised by your teacher registration board, but it's going to get you right into the basics of Class Notebook and OneNote. The other one is OneNoteForTeachers.com. This is a really good web page full of exemplars and all kinds of bits and pieces for you about using Class Notebook and OneNote in general inside your classroom. We've got that aka.ms Microsoft Remote Learning website I told you to jump into, and you can ask questions and see all the other good stuff we're doing in that space. Also, if you're on Twitter, OneNote EDU, okay, so at OneNote EDU is their Twitter handle. That's for OneNote Education. There's real people on there. You ask questions, they're going to answer them for you. Really, really good place to go. And the other one is all those support documents for educators at support.microsoft.com/education. Please remember too, the slides and recordings will be available for you very soon at that link there, as well as our previous webinars, which are already there waiting for you. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, it's aka.ms/MEC newsletter. I'll just get rid of that so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And then also, I invite you to connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You can search for me on LinkedIn. It's Troy Waller, and you'll see I've got a Microsoft little animated avatar. Same in Facebook. Please find me on there, or you can find me on Twitter at Hojusaram. All right. And I'm happy to answer your questions about OneNote and Teams and those kinds of things as well. So unless we've got questions, Clara, I think we're going to call it at 45 minutes.
No questions.
Okay, no worries. So please reach out to me if you need any help. And other than that, we're done for today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar next week. See you, everyone.